Gurmagad Ceann Comhairle agus céad míle fáilte gon na cuairtrí atá an seo aneo. Ceann Comhairle, before I begin, I want to wish the female guard taken to hospital last night a speedy recovery from her injury. Taoiseach, struggling households were dealt two bloody blows on Monday. The first, food inflation has reached its highest level in nearly 2 years. People are being ripped off when they go to the supermarket, and it's clear as day to them that they are being ripped off. The second blow, a big hike in electricity prices for hundreds of thousands of SSE electricity customers, adding hundreds of euros to their bills. Now, Taoiseach, you were asked yesterday, how bad do things actually have to get before you're going to do something about it? You need to stand up to these companies and protect people from this greedy profiteering. When you responded to Mary Lou MacDonald, you said that government is engaging with these companies. If you're referring to the meeting that Darragh O'Brien had with energy companies on September 26th, then the top brass must have left confident that it's business as usual for them, an open season. Because since the Minister's big meeting, Energia, Bord Gáis, Pinergy and SSE Electricity all jacked up their energy prices. And it's reminiscent of May 2023 when Fine Gael Minister Neil Richmond gave the big supermarket chains 6 weeks to get their prices down. Well, Accordia, today, those prices are absolutely through the roof. And while prices rise and companies continue to gouge households, your budget has left working people worse off. Taoiseach, you refused to deliver a cost of living package. You cancelled energy credits. You removed double child benefit payment, and you decided not to give ordinary workers a break in their income tax. All of your decisions are piling more pressure onto people who are already hard pressed. Surely, Taoiseach, you meet with ordinary working people who are struggling. You must hear their stories of worry and stress. So why are you doing nothing about it? At the weekend, in one of my clinics, Taoiseach, I met two teachers. They have 2 children in college. They have to pay for their digs and for their fees. And now their third child is due to start college next September. And they've actually had to ask him to take a year out when he finishes his Leaving Cert because they simply cannot afford to send him to college. So imagine that, Taoiseach. We now have a situation whereby 2 teachers are so hammered by a cost of living crisis that is completely out of control that they have had to ask their child to look towards their future and stop going into college when he should be going into college. Because, Taoiseach, it's bill after bill after bill, and they simply cannot take it anymore. But Taoiseach, this couple is not alone, and you know that. Working people are drowning in a wave of sky-high bills, and they see absolutely no end in sight. And there's going to be a real tension when people's electricity bills land. But you push back against proposals to get energy costs down. You ignore a major report showing energy companies are not passing on the drop in wholesale prices to Irish households, and you act as if this isn't even happening. You need to get off the bench and you need to start fighting in corner for ordinary households because they simply cannot take it anymore. You need to stop protecting these big companies and give regulators the powers they need to end the price gouging and stop this rip-off. Taoiseach fecantine nach bhfuil Jerry teachtar ngéir chéim sa chostas Máiread dula, agus sa Fianna Fáil agus Fine Gael brá sásta seasa siar agus ligean scóp go na cólachtaí móra seo leas amháin seastaine. Catha an rialtas a fostaíon agus céim na hógáil chun costa de hort go Hailey agus Cowrú Low. Taoiseach, you refused to include a cost of living package in the budget. Now you refuse to include in the finance bill meaningful measures to help workers and families cope with runaway prices. Taoiseach, my question is simple. Is this it?
Thank you.
Is this all you have for families? You're just going to leave them, these households, on their own? Are you going to do anything to tackle runaway prices as people face a rip-off winter that will push them even further back?
Ní ein tíim in éiche leis an teachta agus tá annach chuid dénta an bhfuilte seo ó thaobh an costas Maireachtála. A bhfad níos mó dénta ná aon rialtas riamh stair na tíre. Agus go háirithe mar le taglaigh le ícom íseal sa tír seo. Tá annach chuid dénta going agus an rud a dhéanamar ná agus an cinenne a dhéanamar ná níos mó a thabhairt do dhaoine atá ag follingt agus atá faoi bhrú. I reject completely, Deputy, your assertion that the government has not responded to the cost of living issues. And without question, over the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a significant increase in inflation, particularly in the immediate aftermath of COVID and in terms of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which had a very damaging impact on energy prices. And inflation went as high as 10%. Inflation rate now is back down to about 2%. And as the IMF is saying, in Ireland's case, over the next 2 years will come down to about 1.7. But I acknowledge that there is an elevated pressure and prices are at a higher level because of that inflationary period. But remember, we brought free school books for every child in this country. Free hot school meals for every school in this country. Reduced transport costs. Reduced drug payment costs very significantly over the last number of years. Extended eligibility to access to general practitioners, which eases the cost of living in a permanent way for many, many families. And you ignore all of that. And you say you condemn us for not giving energy credits to the wealthiest in society. That is your argument here this morning. And I know what you said during the energy crisis. You took the Liz Truss approach to dealing with it, and you wanted to bail out the companies. You wanted to give a blank cheque to the energy companies when we had that real energy crisis in the aftermath. Yes, you did. You put forward the very same proposal that Liz Truss brought forward in the UK, which had catastrophic impacts on the UK at the time, and in particular on the Prime Minister as well. And also in the recent budget, in terms of the child support payment, we've increased it by over €16 for those over 12, and by an extra €8 for those under 12. And that is significant in terms of a permanent package to significantly enhance the approach to addressing child poverty issues in this country. The working family payment threshold is increased by €60 a week, which will allow more families to qualify or to get support. And we've extended the fuel allowance, as you know, and now up to 26% of households will benefit from the fuel allowance. We've brought in pension auto-enrolment with significant state investment, which will benefit about 750,000 workers into the future. We've focused on protection of jobs in this budget with the research and development tax relief, because jobs and the protection of jobs is the most effective way to enable people to deal with high costs of living. And the fuel allowance has been increased, and in addition to that, we have the VAT rate on electricity in particular, the reduced 9% VAT on gas and electricity bills, has been extended now out to 2030, which is a significant measure by any yardstick in terms of the cost of that. The renters' tax credit is extended until the end of 2028, which will help renters and is helping renters. Mortgage interest relief is extended for 2 more years for certain homeowners. That supports middle-class families who are carrying mortgage costs. And significant changes have been made also in third-level education eligibility. I mean, the income thresholds are very significantly high now, well over 100,000 in case of eligibility, in the context of eligibility for grants and for fees.
Time is up.
And by the way, the evidence of that is in the exponential growth in third-level participation in this country.
Deputy Mairead Farrell.
OK, so Taoiseach, let's look what's actually happening under your watch. 300,000 households are in debt when it comes to their electricity. 1 in 5 children are in poverty under your watch. And now today, Taoiseach, I have told you that 2 teachers who want to send their child to college, who wants to go to college, cannot afford to send them because of the policies that you have implemented, because you have failed to grasp the nettle here when it comes to the cost of living crisis. And to be honest, Taoiseach, I'm here listening to what you have had to say here today, and what you're saying is people are imagining this cost of living crisis, because clearly from what you're telling us is that you've done all these things that are alleviating it. Well, they're not working. And see, when you're Taoiseach, you need to take leadership on this. You need to take a bit of ownership in relation to this. You need to grasp this nettle. You need to say, yes, there is a serious cost of living crisis, and this is what I'm going to do, because you need to accept the reality that what you have been doing to this point has pushed more people into poverty, pushed more people into debt, and pushed more children into homelessness and into poverty. So what people want to hear from you today is, what are you going to do now to help them?
Thank you, Deputy Taoiseach.
I go by the metric of consistent poverty and real deprivation, not relative, which is the figure. You're using relative all along. That's your figures. And secondly, the numbers going to college are increasing significantly year on year. There is no evidence base to support what you're saying in respect of that. And in terms of the energy question, there's no doubt there is a fundamental issue in terms of the regulatory framework that governs our energy markets, not just in Ireland but across the European Union, and particularly its linkage to gas prices. And that's the more fundamental issue that has to be dealt with and addressed. And I would make the point, there is a balance here. What you wanted to do, you wanted to spend an extra $4 billion on top of what the government spent. We've increased public expenditure by 7.5%, okay, which is quite high. You wanted to add another $4 billion to that, and using that would have increased inflation by 2%. That's what you proposed, which would add to the cost of living, which would add to prices. And those are not my figures. That's by the rule of thumb that's deployed by the Central Bank.
Deputy Holly Kern.